2019, 7 o'clock p.m. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Barr.
I'm here.
Blakely.
Here.
Jordan.
Yeah.
Gaspar.
Here.
Laura.
Yes.
Lowe.
Present.
Drummond.
Here. Ms. Blakely, would you do this in the flash?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Dr. Hitchens, are there any items to be added to or removed from the agenda tonight?
There are not.
Right. Do we have one more?
Just no.
Okay. All right, then I would like to jump right into celebrating our successes, and I would like to invite Nicole Prentice, the principal of J.D. Nelson School, to come to the front.
Hi, Nicole. Hello. Thank you so much for having me tonight. It's really exciting to celebrate this with you guys. So, as you know, we have been working on an LRC renovation over at J.D. Nelson it took 3 years to get to this point. So there was 1 year of just planning, visioning, figuring out what's our purpose for the space, what else do we want for the space to be used for, and really doing some research, going out and looking at other LRCs and maker spaces. They all have their own names, but those sorts of things. And then last year we rolled out the new LRC space and continued to plan for what we are calling our STEAM lab. STEAM, it's a maker space, but science, technology, engineering, art, and math is what STEAM stands for. And so it's been such a labor of love and very collaborative. We've had, parent input, student input. Our watchdogs have come and helped build this process with us, and I can't say enough about and thank the facilities and operations team here in the district for helping us through this entire process. Our PTO has been above and beyond supportive to us. And also, I want to give a shout out to Julie Phillips, my LRC director. She couldn't be here tonight. She would have been thrilled to have been here. But every single step of the way for 3 years, we have worked collaboratively to try to make this space work the best that it can for our community. We are very concerned about our students and within school hours and them having access to this space, but we also are thinking about this space being used outside of school hours, before and after school, for clubs and enrichment activities for students. So whenever we have curriculum night or we have our watchdogs launch, we say to our parents, let us know if you have a hobby, an area of expertise, what you're doing in your career, if there's anything that fits that we can bring you in. Hi, there's a parent over there that was very integral in this process. They have taken us at our word, and we've had a parent just this year approach us because of that. He was at the Watchdogs launch, he heard about that, and so we've already sat in a meeting and talked about how to bring him in as a speaker in art, but also to come into the makerspace and work with students. So it's just really exciting, and we got to open it and launch it Monday. First thing was the best way ever to kick off my week because on top of getting to launch it, we got to launch it with the kindergarten students. So they won this honor through our walkathon. Our walkathon is our one big fundraiser we do every year, and it has been really what has funded all of these things, especially the STEAM lab. And they raised the most money in kindergarten, so they got to come in. So I'm going to stop talking, and Sue Gillerlane was there. I invited her, she came, and she made this amazing video that kind of showcases some of the process, but also the launch of the space, so you can kind of see it for yourself. But it's meant to be a space that students can come and wonder and create and try things and discover things as they work to solve problems. So take it away, Sue.
Ready? All right, walking feet.
everybody can see. It did look like that last time I was in here.
They're paid actors.
Don't take 10 of something if you only need 1. Okay? We made a bridge tonight. You could, where is it? Right here, so you can walk. And this is just for breathe air. And then you can slide it down. Nice job. Or you go inside. How can the gingerbread get across the water without the fox getting him? Raise your hand if your group accomplished that task. Did you do what we set out to do? All right, raise your hand if you did not, and boys and girls, it's okay if you did not get it finished. Because that's one of our biggest problems is having enough time. Is there a group that wanted to do one more thing on theirs? Okay, one more question before we leave, because this is kind of cool. If you did not have a chance to finish, guess what? I have a surprise for you. Did you know that you could do something like this at home? How many of you have toilet paper? I have ever seen straws at your house or at McDonald's that you could get and make. You can do an activity like this at
That's a Lego wall. Watch that.
That's so cool.
Aren't they so cute? So thank you so much for letting me come and celebrate. Everyone's invited to come check it out, or if you have questions about the process, or you're always welcome to come by, and we'd love to have you come in. But we're excited to just now get going and let them get in there and do things. So
That is so cool. And
oh, questions? Am I supposed to ask you a
Didn't your husband
question?
help build some of those tables?
I'm sorry?
Didn't your husband help build some of those tables?
Yes. So yes, we designed the tables. The bottoms, the steps actually fold in and out, so that because we wanted all ages to be able to have access, so they easily fold in and out. We wanted the bottom to be open for storage. And so, yeah, designed and built with Julie Phillips' husband, actually, those two tables. But then the watchdogs came in and helped stain them, and Julie also went in on weekends.
I know we
to
have so
help
many
stain.
amazing people in our district, but I did want to just do a tiny shout out, because I know he's not actually a Batavia district person, but just that's how dedicated you guys are to kids.
This place runs on community.
Yeah, it does.
Exactly. The whole thing, the whole process has been amazing because of that. Like, everyone just coming together, chipping in whatever gift they have, whatever time they want to give and devote to it, and yeah, and it's far exceeded our expectations, and we're just thrilled.
It's like an updated barn raising.
Yes, yes, good analogy. I like that. Yes.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you. That's amazing, and we absolutely love starting meetings with that. That's just awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I do not see any pink sheets for public comment. Is there anybody who last minute wanted to make public comment? All right, then we're going to move on to our partners. We do not have Todd Swanson with us tonight, but we do have our student ambassadors, so you guys are front and center.
So, at the high school, a lot has been going on. It was a very busy weekend over the weekend that just finished. On Friday night, there was the 10th Rock the Runway, in which Sarah Dremel participated in. She looked beautiful. Macy Ashmore won that with first place, but it was the alumni show, so people that have already graduated got to come back and make dresses or accessories, and it was really cool to see, and it was like the best show yet. And then on Saturday night there was Mr. BHS, which is sponsored and like run through Key Club. And they were raising money towards spastic paralysis, and they raised thousands of dollars, so it was an awesome cause, and it was a really fun show to watch. And then today and yesterday there was equity training at the high school, which I talked about a couple meetings ago. There was supposed to be a date in November, but the snow day happened, so it got moved, and now there was 2 back-to-back dates, and that was really awesome. It was an awesome experience, and we get to do it again on the 9th of April. I know that this is something that the school is kind of dipping into more now, but every single person that was there, including myself, said that it was like such a transformative and eye-opening and educational, awesome experience, because we did talk about a lot of topics that aren't necessarily talked about in classrooms, like maybe in contemporary issues in American society they might glaze over a couple, but like we talked about social justice and dominance and equality and equity and what that means and how to promote it through the community, and it was a really awesome program that I think everyone found beneficial. And so the reason that I went into that much depth is I think that more things like that in the future would be something that students would really like to see and enjoy to experience.
And then last week we had Fox News in our building because on Tuesday they interviewed 2 students, and I was actually lucky enough to get interviewed, which was awesome. And they also interviewed 2 counselors, and they're basically doing a story about teenage anxiety and what's the big hype right now with anxiety and why are numbers raising and why are so many kids feeling stressed out in and outside of school. And so that will air tomorrow on Fox News, I believe 9 p.m. If you want to watch that. I think that, I mean, me and Crystal Menares, who's another senior, both got interviewed, and I think we did a really, like, we tried to conceptualize kind of what our lives look like right now as high school students. And so it should be a really cool story to see and kind of how they piece it together. And then the reason why this all started was because we are showing the documentary Angst at our school on January 23rd. So all students will view this documentary, which is about teenage anxiety, and that'll be showed second block for all students. And there's also going to be a showing in the BFAC, I believe, that night. That's open to the community so that parents, if they want to see it, or other people from other towns, they can come and watch that because it's supposed to be very awesome and informative.
That's amazing. That's really serious and important stuff that you guys have been working on. And I think that you guys find it meaningful, and I know for sure we find it meaningful, so thank you for that.
Can I ask real quick, Olivia, with numbers on the equity training? What was the room like?
So, Dr. Smith, or I'm not sure exactly who coordinated it, but 2 men came in. One of them was from Arizona, and the other one was from Washington, I believe. And they talked to, I think there were about 80 of us. And it was 8th graders, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. There were no seniors because this is supposed to be a thing that gets taken into the future, so next year and then the years to follow that. So, yeah, I think there was like 20 from each grade, but yeah.
And then there's plans for you guys to then be working in the school to be continuing these conversations, right, and the work that you started.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure, well, I know that they took all of the like leadership figures through the community, but they also wanted to take people that don't always necessarily have their voice heard. So through clubs that might not be as popular as Student Council or Key Club, like there were a lot of representatives there from like the Pride Alliance and from like other parts of the school that, while they are very important, they don't always get the same voice as bigger clubs and bigger organizations. And so I think that having everyone be able to come together, it created a very diverse environment that branched beyond the main opinions that you would hear. So yeah, it was really cool.
You guys keep up the good work. Hope your new semester is fun. Whew, versus like I'm winding down.
We're working on it.
All right, we'll move on to committee updates. We'll start down with John Gaspar.
February 1st is deadline for nominations for Hall of Honor. That's all I have.
Okay.
Insurance committee meeting Thursday. That's what I know.
Okay.
I'll report that.
RAC is meeting again in February. Are we still looking for a new community person? Do we know?
Yes.
We are seeking out a community member to join the most amazing committee that the district has to offer. It is a very overarching look at the financial responsibility, the resource responsibilities of the whole district. If you're interested in finding out more about how your tax dollars and how it all fits together from every aspect of resource allocation throughout the community, throughout the district, this is the committee you need to be on. And then looking forward to the insurance committee later this week as well.
Excellent. CAC has not met. We're meeting. I didn't miss the last meeting, but I think we shamed me at the last board meeting, so I will be at the next CAC meeting.
I don't have any updates. If you'd like to,
We meet next week.
we meet next week. But they're working hard.
Yeah, I think we've all got that, like, nothing happens during the holidays, and so we're all going to be working soon.
Yeah, along those lines, we had no capital projects. We did do architectural reviews, Kathy and I, which will come up later, and I attended a coffee with the principal at Rotolo, which I think we're going to discuss later, so we'll cover that then.
Sounds good.
For the foundation, BFE grants are due by 4 p.m. on February 8th here at RJAC. Also, we are now accepting scholarship applications. You can find information on that on the website, bataviafoundation.org. They are due March 1st at 4 p.m. I think you can turn them in here and at the high school. Also, the STEM school, there's an informational meeting at Aurora University Banquet Hall on February 27th from 6 to 8 p.m. The applications for that are due by March 11th at 3 p.m. here at RJAC. What else? And the lottery will be held March 18th. And there are 8 positions open, I think. So there's a waiting list if you don't get in. That's all I have for that.
Can I get 10 more seconds?
Yes.
Okay, something I skipped over for RAC. I hear people in the communities, because we posted this, and some of the feedback I've heard online is that money and finances are not my thing. They were not my thing when I joined this committee either. Part of the mission of this committee is to present financial information that is so broad and big for this district in a way that members of the community like myself can consume. So that's why we need members of the community who might not necessarily have numbers as their thing help us do better. So please join RAC.
I like it.
Do you guys have t-shirts or anything?
That's in the plan.
Secret handshake.
There is a secret handshake for sure.
That's what I just said.
The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, which is an opportunity for us to vote on a number of routine recurring business items. All of the details are outlined in the board docs packet. And so, Mr. Pierce, would you take us through the consent agenda?
Absolutely. 5.1 and 5.2 is the approval of the December 18th, 2018 regular and closed session meeting minutes. 5.3 is our personnel report. 5.4 is our monthly payroll and bills. 5.5 is the approval of a dishwasher lease from Ecolab. 5.6 is the designation of authorized account with Arbiter Pay. 5.7, destruction of our closed session recordings from July 18th, 2017.
5.8 is our school calendar amendment, and finally 5.9 is the approval of this consent agenda.
All right, are there any items for removal or for clarification on the consent agenda?
No.
All right, well then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Gaspar, second by Blakely. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, consent agenda is approved. The next item on our agenda is our reports. I will hand it over to Dr. Hamstra.
Sure, before I go into the policy report, do you have any, there were no FOIAs this month? And
Hardly.
it's very hard to
That's
believe.
impossible.
There have been since the board book came out, but for this board book, there were none in the prior month. And then the treasurer's reports, if there are any questions, now would be a time to ask. Those are reports that are presented to the board every month. So the policy, we try to stay on top of policy by putting it on every month or every few months. And so we're trying to bring this to you in manageable pieces. But there are two policies and one procedure that we're bringing to you this month for our first reading. So with policies, the board needs to vote on them, and we bring them usually in 2 meetings so that we have a chance to talk about it, and then I'll bring them back and make any tweaks as necessary. And for those of you that are not very familiar with board policy, they are the local action that we take to put what the legislators have put into have enacted, and we have to make that local by putting it into our policy. And there are so many laws that are out there that govern education and that are constantly being brought forth. And so we do have a service that we use. Most school districts use the press service, which is the IASB, the Illinois Association of School Boards, that they have a team of lawyers that go through all of the legislation and figure out what we need to do to our policies to make sure that we're following the state laws and mandates. And so that's a little explanation, because I do know that we have some new people in the audience. We also have some board candidates, and we have a board election coming up in April. And we have some candidates that are here learning about what it means to be a board member. So when you see these policies, usually they come from press, but sometimes locally we have things that we would like to tweak, and so we do have that flexibility as well, as long as we're complying with what the state tells us we need to comply with. But the ones that you see here today are just from the state, and our policy service has told us we should make these changes. So the first is a change to the board member oath and conduct, because the prior oath was just those first few bullets that you see about serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets. They were a little bit limiting, so they've been expanded thanks to some action by our elected officials at the state. So those are our quality statements that you see there that we need to add to the oath. And then we'll have to figure out how we're actually going to read this, because that'll be a good 15 minutes we're going to have to set aside, because it is pretty lengthy right now. So questions or comments on that policy? So the board member oath will be taken by all of the newly elected board members at the April meeting when they're seated. And then we could decide also if we wanted the seated board members to also do the oath at that time, since there are some new statements.
Oh, I think that's an excellent idea. I think you should have an oath from every seated board member at that
I state your
particular
name
ceremony. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, April, we are, to stay within the 30 days, we're doing the seating at the April meeting.
I think that's a great idea.
The new,
But you're still
but no, 27.
You're still here that
Wait. No. That's when you read the new board members in, right?
Right.
You're still here that day. Jason was still here the day.
You should take that day off,
Yeah,
John.
usually we do, at that April meeting, usually what we do is we have a thank you to the board members, and you actually,
send you off with a
Basket, like a fruit basket or something?
you actually have to vote, you have to vote to adjourn the existing board of the
Oh,
seven of
right, I remember
you.
that.
Or else we don't let you leave, John.
Right, so then,
I'll vote no.
you can do that, but
So you're saying no?
you have to vote to adjourn this board,
Yeah.
and then we bring in, we do a swap, and the new people come up, and then we vote. And
What
then
if we don't
swear them
vote to
in.
adjourn the board? Where does that leave us?
That leaves you right there.
Okay, interesting.
So is there 2 board meetings in April then?
No, it's at the April 27th meeting, we're going to do this.
There's 2 board meetings on the same night.
Yeah.
No, I know that. Okay.
We don't have.
I'm just going back to, it was usually April, then seating was in May.
Right.
So that's why I'm just wondering why it's
Because we
changed
won't meet
this
for
time.
30 days otherwise.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
So we had
get
to
it in.
kind of shift the date.
All right.
You good with that? Is the furrow gone
It's
from your brow?
the law, it's the law.
Okay. Appreciate that
This-
law-abiding citizenship.
The second policy, I'm going to shoot this over to Brad to talk about the curriculum changes.
Sure. Lawmakers, like Lisa said, like to enact, you may think like the state of Illinois legislature is really dysfunctional and they can't get anything done, but they can make laws about education. And that does impact what they require us to teach. The curriculum content is something that we're audited on annually by the Regional Office of Education. So all of the things you see listed here are things that need to be a part of our curriculum. It doesn't say how we have to teach those to the extent that we have to teach those, but it does say that we have to teach those things. You can see that the new updates are to things that we need to teach as a part of our driver's education program, and then also about biking and walking to school as well. And we are currently in the process of working with our Batavia Bicycle Commission because they've been a big part. We've been doing this in the past, but they've been a big part of helping us accomplish this task in the past. So now that it's a mandate through the legislature, we are going to continue to work with them to embed this within our curriculum.
Right.
But those are the big updates, yeah.
Can I play here for a minute?
Sure.
Those of you in the audience and watching on television, speaking to the state of Illinois curriculum, if my fellow members will pull up 6.6, actually look at point 13 on here. Allow me to read. In all schools, United States history must be taught, including A, the principles of representative government, B, the constitutions of the U.S. and Illinois, C, the role of the U.S. in world affairs, D, the role of labor unions, and, ready, E, the role and contributions of ethnic groups, including but not limited to the African Americans, Albanians, Asian Americans, Bohemians, Czechs, French, Germans, Hispanics, including the events related to the forceful removal and illegal deportation of Mexican-American U.S. citizens during the Great Depression, Hungarians, Irish, Italians, Lithuanians, Polish, Russians, Scots, and Slovakians in the history of this country and state. I'm sure we're doing an awesome job with that.
It goes on.
I know. I know. It's fascinating reading. 15, in all schools, the curriculum includes instruction as determined by the superintendent or designee on the Holocaust and crimes of genocide, including Nazi atrocities, 1933-45, Armenian genocide, the famine genocide in Ukraine, and more recent atrocities in Cambodia, Bosnia, Rwanda, and Sudan. Any students of American history here? What's left out? Anyone? Going once? Native Americans aren't mentioned anywhere. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. You might be interested in it. That's part of the requirement. I'm done. Thank you, madam.
Thanks, Jen.
Sure.
Moving on, then the last piece is a helpful exhibit. It really is helpful, this particular one. The content includes everything that we're mandated to report, and so this would be something that the principals would use as just as a reminder of all the things that they're mandated to report and to whom they need to report them. So for example, if we become aware of any student hazing incidents, we're required by law to report that to our local law enforcement. So this is an exhibit we'll hand over to the principals to make sure they have the most updated versions of what they must report. And then there's a second part of it that has the things that we're required to post. So for example, if we had lead in our drinking water, we would be required to post that. So there's a few things that are required postings in addition to the required notifications. And the board does not vote on exhibits. However, we bring them to you just so that you can know that they are going on the website as a part of your policy, and if you had any comments, we could certainly talk about how we would change those, but we want to make sure you see them before they get posted.
This might be an ignorance point on my part. Is the draft marked by us or is draft marked by the press?
It's marked by press.
Okay, and because I'm not used to it, I feel like that's different. The draft notation.
So sometimes it depends on how we bring them to you, because sometimes, like this one was the overhaul was so major that sometimes I'll bring a red line version of our own, and then sometimes I just take the press version and upload it for you guys, because the changes it would be hard to read with all the track changes, because they basically flipped the order of everything.
So eventually this will come back to us in non-draft format from press?
Well, Kathy Scafidi actually retypes everything onto the website. We don't upload our policy in that format, so she's going to retype all of that. Thank you, Kathy.
So you bring those back next time?
I will bring the 2 policies back for the second reading and adoption if you have no things that you would like to change. I'll just bring them back as is.
But we can always talk about them again at the next meeting. We do not have to, we're not required to approve them if we think of something between now and then.
Right, sometime between now and when we do get audited by the ROE, and they do make sure that these things that our policies are current. And I like to pass our audits with the ROE.
We could add your teaching points though then, right?
What's that?
So the requirements?
You don't want to add that.
Oh, okay.
No.
That was for our education.
Gotcha.
We do have 2 more reports tonight. The first one is the annual student services report. As a part of the board's policy, there are certain things that you ask that we come back and report annually or on some other schedule, and this is one of the reports that you have asked to hear annually.
So for this report, I'm going to ask Lisa Palisi to come up to the table and provide you kind of an overview of some of the strengths and opportunities that are within our student services. Student services is special education, so it's called student services in both your policy, and we use that term as well. So just to clarify. But Lisa?
Thank you, Brad. I can't believe it's been a year. If you remember, last year was kind of a big event. There was lots of special guests that I wasn't aware of. So I'm going to kind of segue into an RMS discussion about some different things that have happened at RMS since a year ago, when you kind of charged us with helping with the schedule and helping things be a little bit more manageable for the students and the staff there. So always starting with positive things. Our students are continuing to grow. Our students with disabilities this is the 7th year in a row where we've seen a huge jump percentage-wise in the growth of students with disabilities in our district, so that's very exciting. Our specialized programs have just been booming. So when we think about us being a part of the Mid-Valley Co-op with 5 districts, Lisa and I get to spend every month at meetings at Mid-Valley looking at the different programs and talking about the best way to service our students. And we are one of the only districts in the area that houses our own programs for students with intellectual disabilities, Down syndrome, autism, and emotional disabilities, whereas our neighboring districts tend to send those students to the co-op for services. So we've seen this year, since this time last year, we've had an additional 12 students successfully return from outplacement programs, including residential facilities, where students that were so disabled and so much struggling with their emotional needs were outplaced to places out of our state, who have graduated, and many have gone off to college. So this has been probably our most exciting year for kids coming back successfully, and that's something I just can't say enough about, and it's really because of the teams that we have. We have teachers and related services staff members here who came to Batavia saying, I only want to be a part of Batavia if I can be a part of a specialized program, because that's what their hearts feel about these kids. So that's super exciting and something that we just continue to grow in that area. The other big piece is just our community partners. Batavia United Way and Chip In once again came through with, about $20,000 in donations overall last year and leading into this year to support our SEL needs. So we have contract therapists that are coming in and providing services to our students right here in school. These are kids that may not be able to afford to go to things after school or may be really reluctant to go to things after school. So we're bringing in these people right into our school setting, which has been a tremendous support, especially to our students that are struggling with drug and alcohol needs. So Kim Boatner, who's now has a private practice in Geneva, is coming here regularly, working with kids as part of a restorative practice instead of discipline, which has been a really great thing. So we've had very few suspensions because of drug and alcohol. We've really expanded that even to the middle house. Nate from Lighthouse is the name of the organization, has been coming to the middle school to support the students that have that need. So we're really trying to even reach the students at a younger age, which is awesome. This is our second year for our Social Emotional Learning Institute Days. So one of them is just Batavia. So I know that our high school team was talking about angst. So we're going to have another showing of that for staff on those days, along with about 20 community providers that will come in and teach us a little bit more about how to support students with anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, or even just some conduct disorders within the classroom. So that's very exciting. And then Brad and I took on the Kane County event last year for the first time. So this is our second year hosting for all of Kane County. So we'll have about 500 visitors on that day with a very similar format. So that's really exciting to have. I'm going to share MTSS for my segue to Brian coming up in a few minutes. It's so fun to share all the great news, but Tina always says I need to make sure that I'm being honest about concerns that we're having, and I'm feeling like no matter what we do, it's really not enough when it comes to social emotional needs of our kids, and it's really, really concerning. And when I hear the high school students talk about meeting with Fox News about anxiety, and then I look at what we're seeing every day, it's something that I don't really know exactly what the answer is. I feel like we're doing all of these great things. We've added our ALOT program at the middle school. We have it at the high school. We have community people coming in. We're doing professional learning for our staff and students. But yet the number of students that are struggling all the way from kindergarten up at this point just keeps going up, despite some of the things that we've done. Some of the details that I didn't write specifically in the report, but I just want to make sure you're aware of. This school year alone, we've done 92 risk assessments on individual students. So that means students shared something about themselves or their life that was alarming enough to a social worker or a counselor to know that we had to sit down and interview them to decide if they needed help beyond what our school could provide. And out of those 92 risk assessments, 51 of those students were hospitalized because the hospital community felt they were at enough of a risk that they needed to be hospitalized for that level of support. And what we know is statistics tell us that within the 3 months after returning from a hospitalization, that's the most at risk any teenager will be. So we have to be so vigilant when they return from hospitalization. So they go and we hear very little when they're gone. We have our hospital liaison and we have to fight with the hospitals just to get information about the day they return. We often find out about it the evening prior to their return and set up a rushed meeting in the morning. But that 3 months is so critical for a second attempt at suicide. So teenagers that want to die oftentimes will make that second attempt within 3 months. So when we talk about our home hospital liaison being available to kids and how critical that is, that's where I'm feeling very, very concerned because we are seeing an increase in hospitalizations and an increase in risk assessments at middle school and high school, but hospitalizations especially at the high school to the point where the home hospital liaison is feeling like she cannot keep up having that as a part-time assignment.
So it's really becoming something that we're very, very concerned about. In addition, we continue to have lots of students that are showing school anxiety or truancy. We currently have 95 students at the high school that would be considered chronic truant and 32 at the middle school, meaning that they've missed more than 10 days of school this year without a doctor's excuse or parent excusal. So there is a lot going on. A lot of great things happening. You know, we've changed the role of our social worker at the elementary level, where our social workers, instead of teaching wellness to all kids, are now focusing in on students at risk. We're doing a social emotional screener that teachers fill out to identify kind of our internalizers at the elementary level, and our social workers are doing social academic intervention groups with all at-risk students. They're going into classrooms and they're co-teaching. I feel like we're really doing a great job finding the kids early that need our support. So I do see the future this will be better. I think the hospitalizations at the middle school, which are down 59% compared to this time last year, so the risk assessments have doubled, but hospitalizations have done the opposite. Why? Because we're finding the kids. So we're finding the kids early and we're intervening. So the middle school, because I feel like they have a really good system in place, and compared to the number of kids that need it, a little bit better of a staffing situation with their counselors and social workers. So they identify kids and they go immediately into groups for anxiety or depression. Some are led by our counselors, some are led by our social workers, and some are led by our outside providers, but they're happening every single day at the middle school. So I feel like that's keeping our kids out of hospitalization at the middle school, and that's so awesome and so wonderful. What we're not reaching at the middle school is the kids that we can't get here, because we're really so focusing on the kids that we want to keep safe. So that's a middle school issue. At the high school, to be perfectly honest, that building is bending over backwards to do what's best for kids. Joanne, as the building leader, is incredibly concerned. You know, she is an incredibly strong person who doesn't talk that much about social emotional. That's not her favorite topic. And this is the first year that she has personally reached out to me saying, Lisa, I don't know how else to support our counselors and social workers. They are running around like I've never seen them run around before. They are so worried about the kids, and I'm feeling like we need to do something different so that we can reach kids earlier, like we're trying to do at the elementary level. So that's my big concern at high school, is by the time we're getting to them, they're already have one foot in the door at the hospital. And it's really concerning that we're not getting to them earlier. And then the other piece of it is just really taking a look at that early intervention when it comes to some of our at-risk students who are not attending preschool, African American, and our English language learners really being over-identified for special education. So Brad and I are working on some creative plans to try to reach those kids earlier, because it all flows together. So when I'm thinking about the middle school, thinking about the changes we've made, so again, last year, yes, it was not my favorite moment in time, you know, hearing about teachers not feeling supported, but it did lead to some really positive changes, and Brian's going to come up and join me so we can talk about that. And I think you'll see from some of the things that Brian shares today that I think we jumped right in with this goal of let's figure out the best way to get more support into classrooms. And I think we did that in a very collaborative way with the teachers really jumping in and coming to co-teaching training, and we did a lot of great things. But I feel like we have so much more to do to get our kids to a point where they're really feeling like they can handle a full day of school.
Before we move forward, can we just define for the audience ALOP and MTSS?
Sure.
Just so everybody else knows what we're talking about.
So ALOP is Alternative Learning Opportunities Program, and it simply means it's a program that's funded by the state of Illinois, which gives alternative learning options for kids. So this is something that we're blessed enough to have at both middle school and high school. So at our middle school level, there is a special education teacher and a counselor that are responsible for that program. And the focus is really students that are showing more of those internalizing behaviors. So they're either in and out of hospitalization or showing a lot of reluctancy to come to school. and we're able to really adjust the program to meet them where they are. So if they're a student that has extreme anxiety and just can't even fall asleep at night, no problem, you can start your day at 11. What subject do you feel the best about? I feel really great in social studies, and I love my social studies teacher, awesome. So you get to go to social studies. Where are you struggling the most? Math. Maybe we'll do that with a tutor and do that online in the room, whatever the student's needs is. And then social workers and outside providers come in and provide that support right there. So that's middle school and at the high school.
Because at most districts, ALAP is off-site, correct?
Yes, yes.
Which limits the staff that are dealing with the kids on a daily basis to really have that daily
Absolutely. It's really, in a lot of districts, it's used more like a safe schools program for kids that are acting out. The difference at our high school is we have one person responsible for that program, Steve. So when I think about like why is RMS more successful right now with ALAP and maybe even with the hospitalizations, is I think we really jumped into that program after knowing a little more and really gave it the supports that it needed. So at the high school, Steve Lesniak, who is a counselor and a teacher, is really filling both roles. And we have some push-in support from a social worker, but it's also a social worker who's also responsible for our Developing Opportunities program. So it's been difficult to really give them that dual service model at the high school. But still lots of great successes and still that same idea of really meeting kids where they are and completely adjusting the program to what they need. And then MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, which used to be kind of RTI, which was response to intervention, where again, we're looking at the whole child and meeting them where they are. So the difference between MTSS and RTI is it also takes a look at students that are very high achieving. It's all about growth. So if you're here, we want you here. Academically, if you're social emotionally challenging, we want to help you grow there. If you're struggling with math, we want to help you grow there. So it's meeting our kids wherever they are and providing interventions and support prior to special education and hopefully instead of special education.
Thank you. Hopefully that helps everybody listen.
Yeah, thank you. I forgot that I used a lot of those terms. Thank you. Any other questions about the numbers or the data?
If you had a magic wand, how would you fix it all? Like if there were no consequences, like all the money in the world, all the time in the world, what would that, like, how do we fix it?
Is that okay, Tony, if I say that if there was all the money in the world?
We wouldn't.
Right. Yeah. So if money was not an issue, it would be, I think it would be an easy fix and we get started on it tonight.
And it's just people?
So it's more than people because I think, you can't just throw people at an issue. It's about systems. It's about setting up systems. But if I were in charge of giving Brian everything he needed at the middle school, he would have minimally another social worker so that every grade level has a counselor and a social worker that are really working together to get to kids early. And then when the counselor is realizing that the needs are a little beyond what a counselor typically does, we go right into that next level of support and back and forth. So minimally at the middle school, we'd add that additional support. We'd continue to expand on our ALAP program and bring in those outside community resources, which we have found have been really much more beneficial than continuing just to add our own staff because it's a different expert opinion and it really brings in that family piece. At the high school, it would take a lot more than just one more person. So I feel like we're really at a point now with the needs of our kids, and I honestly didn't even feel this way even 2 years ago. But I feel like from a social emotional perspective, we are very understaffed at the high school. I think we're doing great things. I think the teachers it's amazing what they're willing to do and how they're willing to support our kids. I don't feel it's any lack of trying at all, but we are literally we're doing very, very little for general education students who need social emotional supports. We're really focused on special ed students at the high school, and that's just because that's all we can really get to at this point. So that would take a little bit more people, but we have the systems in place now, so getting the people in would be so much more effective than it would have been 2 years ago. So, yeah.
Can I just ask, is this something that, I know the answer, but I want you to share the answer. Is this something that you're seeing that you think is only happening in Batavia?
oh my gosh, no. No, it is everywhere. It is everywhere. I'm from next door.
Right.
You know, a mistake I made years ago, I'm sorry. It's just, there's different issues at each of our neighboring school districts, but boy, are the issues real. The residential placements, the hospitalizations, and I think that we are way ahead of what the other districts are doing. The idea of, and we've talked about this before, the idea of bringing in outside therapists, they think that's complete crazy talk in neighboring districts. You just do not do that. Parents take care of this, schools take care of this. The idea of bringing back kids from outplacements, there's no desire to do that because they're taken care of somewhere else. So I feel like we're doing so many great things here. The fact that our staff is so open. I mean, our science and our math teachers and our social studies teachers reach out to me all the time for ideas. Can you come in and observe? Can you give me some feedback on classroom management? So I feel like we're way ahead of the game on what we're doing about it, but the problem is everywhere.
So another question I have, a lot of what your report is, I know, is based on what we consider in our special education population. But, and you did state that our general ed population, I want to make sure that their services, they aren't being missed.
Yes.
So when you're talking about the services that we're providing, I know your numbers are coming from one population.
Yes.
But this isn't just happening in this population.
Yeah, and let me clarify. So when we're talking about risk assessments, the majority of our risk assessments are general education students. So our special education students, I'm actually not that worried about them. They are in the best place in the world. I mean, they are getting an incredible amount of services from, I've been here 25 years. This is the strongest staff we've ever had. I mean, our staff in special education, I feel, any classroom I send any of our students, we have people moving in all the time for special ed. Those are not the kids I'm worried about. These are general education students that we're doing these risk assessments. These are students that are not at all in our radar. When we do the screening, it's sweet little Samantha with freckles, you know, so, and that's across grade levels. When they did the BSAD assessment for suicide risk at the high school and the middle school, they were kids that no teacher said, I cannot believe that came out in that survey. I would never have thought in my wildest dreams that was on Johnny's mind.
Right.
Those are gen ed
Kids who are
students.
getting potentially good grades.
Absolutely.
From the outside look like they've got everything going.
Straight A, honor students.
So really the quote, this would never be my time, is really not applying to what's going on anymore.
Right. Yeah. Two parts of this are special ed. The growth and the over-identification of ELL and the 12 kids coming back.
Right.
Everything else is all of our kids. And that's why Brad clarified, student services, special ed, but it's all students, for sure.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And this may be way too big of a topic, you know. I'm certainly not going to solve it tonight, but do you have an idea of why this is increasing? Like, you know, you're seeing this increase in the population and anxiety.
I think there's lots of theories. You know, I do feel, because I was really looking like, one of the things that Tony has really helped me with over the last couple of years is being better about data collection and really making sure we're learning. And I think we've all seen that, right? But it's such a good thing because now we are now taking data on every single risk assessment. So we're entering it in, we're putting the reason, we're putting down what the kids are saying. So at any moment I can tell you, at this point in time today, this is how many risk assessments. I couldn't have even guessed that last year. It would have been really guessing, you know. So a lot of the feedback we're getting from kids, and we see so overall at the elementary. So this year at elementary, we've done 8 suicide risk assessments. And that's sad. That's very, very sad. So we've had 8 suicide assessments at the elementary level, and that's unthinkable. But if you think that there's been 92 total, so that's over 6 schools. They're quadrupling in middle, and then doubling that at the high school level. So I do think a lot of it is, when you're an elementary student, you have a pretty set day. We've got lots of transitions built in. We have a little bit less pressure. We have people coming into our classroom to support us. We have one teacher that we love and trust. We have a social worker, et cetera, et cetera. Brian's going to talk a little bit about what that happens at middle school, high school. I think there becomes some less pressure. We've got our special ed students love high school because of block schedule and a little bit less subjects to worry about and all those things. But what the kids refer back to a lot to is not being noticed or being noticed too much. So the whole idea of, and I don't want to blame it on social media, but that whole idea of how many people read my story, or how many people didn't read my story, or how many people noticed this, or back in the day, if I would cancel, we joked about this before, but if I would say, I'm not feeling good, I can't come to your party, Susie, no one would know that I actually made plans with Jennifer. Right. Now, everybody knows. So there's this kind of immediate feeling of, I'm a loser, I have no friends, and everyone's abandoning me, and everything just gets so, I think, blown out of proportion. And that becomes so hard for us to know within the school setting on how to help with, that piece of it.
I think that's hard for parents to understand.
Yes.
I think it's hard for students to understand. Yeah. They are too, my students would tell me that has nothing to do with it.
Yes. Yeah.
But it does.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily think it's because school's so hard. I think life is hard. Like there's just life is hard. I mean, we have really bright students, and even students that don't have the most challenging schedules are stressed out. So I think it's just a combination of everything that we're facing. And I think so many of us can sit and think about our own children. I think I'm a pretty balanced mom, but my kids have struggled with anxiety. And it's real, and it's so real to them, and it's heartbreaking as a parent. And I'm just an amazing mom who does everything right. So I just don't know how
I don't know how it happens.
My family.
We're all perfect.
So I think it's a lot of things.
Yeah. No, that's interesting because that's not one aspect I've even thought of really.
Yeah. We've been doing a lot of asking the kids, so that's the beauty of having a hospital liaison is when the kids come back, ideally she meets with them 5 times before they transition to other services, so she gets to hear right from the student what made you feel this way, and those are a lot of things that they're sharing. Yeah.
Great. That's good to know.
Next, Brian.
So thank you, and I would echo just the amount of celebrations that we can talk about at the middle school because of the systems and the people that we have, and the counselors and the social workers and the teachers that are in the classroom are doing amazing work with our Tier 2 and Tier 3 students, really all of our students. And about a year ago or so, we were given this opportunity and the charge of figuring out different ways for us to look at MTSS in our building. And that was a very large task to accomplish. We went about it in a number of ways in order to get students what they need during the day. We talked about things like equity over the last couple of days. Getting kids what they need during our school day is challenging. For our students, with the number of students and kind of 4 different, I use the analogy of like tracks on the train, and for our kind of intents and purposes, we've operated on a system that's worked well for a lot of kids, with 4 different tracks on the train. 6th grade's got their train, and 7th grade's got their train, 8th grade and exploratory. And when we have a system like that, it works for most kids, but it doesn't work for all kids. And just like getting down to some real basic examples, if a student is in this grade and you're trying to use a teacher to help with reading support or EL support or this type of support, maybe you can get 30 to 40 minutes worth of help or 20 or 30 minutes of help over the next period of time. And so what we were trying to do is figure out what we valued, why do we value it, really getting into what is it that kids need academically and social emotionally, try to develop something that would be more beneficial for kids. Lisa mentioned kind of like what an elementary student does, and we started looking at things kind of from a more unit school district type of approach, and we thought about we've termed this term like cognitive overload.
trying to compare what a student in K-5 experiences versus what 6-8 experiences, what the high school experiences in terms of number of minutes per content and a number of adults throughout the school day. So our middle school schedule right now has served a lot of kids for a long time, continues to serve kids fairly well, and we continue to do good work, and we'll continue to do good work next year. But they'll take 4 core academic class periods, and that's social studies and science and language arts and math. They have 3 exploratory periods a day. They have just 20 minutes of lunch and 20 minutes of intervention time is really a part of their full day. Anywhere between, depending if they take trimester classes or full year exploratory classes, they could be working with anywhere between like 9 to 14 different teachers during the day. Maybe that's with co-taught a little bit more, a little bit less. At the elementary level, you're at about 60 minutes a day for math, 90 minutes a day for ELA. Science and social studies have kind of a unit flip. My understanding is about a 3-week basis. The high school experience on the block is 4 content areas at a time, maybe 4 to 5 adults at a time. And as we took an opportunity, because we think we know what kids experience because we're the adults and we're there, and we asked kids a lot, but we took the time this year. I think we had 24 staff members, including myself, participate in what was called Shadow Week. And we took the time. I put on a PE uniform. I went and participated. We took a sampling of our building, and we shadowed our kids from 8 to 3, and it was challenging. We saw great things in the classroom. We saw kids felt safe. We saw that there was good levels of student engagement. We saw that they were accepted, all things that we liked, but we also saw that wow, our teachers do a lot during the day. Our kids do a lot during the day. And when we think about what it is that kids need or kids would benefit from, we have a very traditional middle school approach with the core subjects and the exploratory subjects, and wanted to figure out how can we get more MTSS support to students during the day so that they can grow academically and social emotionally. And I think what we agreed to related to MTSS was that any student would benefit from any level of enrichment. All students need help with things like executive functioning, organization, stress reduction, a little bit of downtime in their day. Every child benefits from that type of approach right now. And we have struggled with our current intervention time. Our current intervention time is opposite of lunch. It's about 20 minutes or so. In some ways we go pretty academic intervention heavy, where we were focusing in on a math and a reading skill, and then we would pull back because our kids would say, or our staff would say, we need some time to build relationships with them. Okay, all right, so now we're focusing on building relationships, and then so now we need some time to focus in on reading skills and math skills and EL skills and all these skills along the way. And we really kind of stuck with this predicament of how do we build relationships with kids during the day, and how do we fill those gaps, not just at the tier 2 and tier 3 level, but at the tier 1 level. And I think to echo your point, this is really not our proposed schedule change, and any work that we continue to do to help kids in our current form is really not just about tier 2 and tier 3. It really is about our gen ed curriculum, for social emotional learning, and our general education student that is struggling right now with our school day, with things that are related to school and not related to school. So we took about a year. We did a lot of research. We tried to engage collaboratively as best as we can, and certainly I think that there's some areas that we could have improved on, working with different stakeholders in our community better and informing them a little bit more about kind of the why we were focusing in on supporting MTSS. And it was not easy work. And this work is extremely complex. And we're committed to continuing to find ways for us to work with students. The product that we put out to the public was not the solution. And as we put out that product to the public and worked with our teachers and got additional feedback, we ultimately made the decision to pull that product back. So you kind of saw like the what But I think what we could have done a better job of explaining was like kind of how it was going to work, but more ultimately the why. Similar to what Lisa and I are talking about is why is MTSS important to my child? My child right now is getting all straight A's. My child is involved in everything. My child is these, and we applaud that. That's great. But we also worry about that student as well. Our job is to worry about every single student in our district, and certainly in my role in my building. And we take that very seriously, and we try to create something that could lessen that cognitive overload. But we created a product that was clearly less than desirable for what it is that we were trying to create. So there's some lessons to learn and some reflection on that we'll do for where we're at right now.
So the reflection just starting. Kind of what I'm hearing is the reflection time that is just getting kicked in.
I think so, yeah.
Hindsight being 2020 and having that magic wand, same magic wand that I gave you. What's a realistic? If you had to do it all over again, what's a realistic time frame to execute something as daunting as this at your building?
I think we've really learned a lot in a year. I think the variance in viewpoints, even amongst our own staff, have grown over that year, and I certainly don't want to give the sense that there's like full buy-in that a change was needed, or these are the changes that we wanted. So I know it's more than a year. I certainly think that additional time, it'd be hard to quantify. We're still so much in that reflection phase. I think we have to build capacity amongst our staff in understanding MTSS, that it's not really a specific time in our day. I think if we ask our students in our building, we say, if we were to explain MTSS to our kids or to our parents, they would say that it's X time. And I think that's a product, that's one piece of MTSS, but MTSS is really every period, every day, every classroom for students. That's how we pre-assess, that's how we use our curriculum, that's how we differentiate, that's how we personalize, that's how we do business. And I think that we have failed at making that more clear to our public and to our kids. So I'd say before we can really even get into a product that sets up a day, this amount of time, and it's this type of schedule or it's that type of schedule, we have to go back to what kind of supports are available for kids and why are they important for kids. And however long that takes, then we can consider thinking about manipulating our time of the day. I think that's a major step that we missed.
Yeah, I would, to also answer your question, I would echo what he said, but the million-dollar question is, well, when is the new schedule going to come out? And I think that's not the question we're focused on right now, because it was...
Right, but I think a lot of the public is.
We focused, I think, a lot of the work on the schedule itself, because the staff really does have buy-in as far as what the middle school philosophy is and how they operate as a building. It's not just by chance that they have the supports and programs that they do. And I think that as a community, what we heard is that we needed to go back and revisit that as a community. What are our hopes and dreams for the middle school experience for our kids, and not just hyper-focus on the schedule. And so we need to go back and do some of that work first and build buy-in about what the approaches that are taken, whether or not they're the right ones that the community is looking for, and make sure everybody understands the why.
Okay. You shot the rocket off before anyone knew why we were going to the moon. This was the question for the community that I understand. The feedback that I got mostly wasn't so much about the what, it was about the why. And we haven't addressed the why. The board, I don't think, feels like it was involved in the why. I think that this went by us, lickety-split, and everybody turned around and said, what the heck just happened, okay? You've given us a very compelling reason tonight. Your reasoning behind making fundamental changes, how we approach it, are good reasons. I believe that. I believe that you're good people doing good work for good reasons. The community at large will always be conservative in that if they don't understand something is broke, they won't understand why the hell you want to fix it. Okay? We didn't communicate that. That work hasn't been done. And this isn't just about you folks. This was all of us. All of us. We have ownership on this. It's better, I think, to take a bit of time, to do it right, to come up with a compelling story, an explanation why this needs to be changed, how we're going to fix what we see as broken, and give it some time so that people understand it. It's a fundamental change. It's earth-shaking to some people who have expectations. And you all have been kicked around enough on this. We don't need to belabor a point. Take your time. We did send this back to you. We, this board, did send this back. We did say to you, you have smart people, fix it. I remember the meeting.
But that's where we erred. We erred at that point.
Well, that was your fault.
I know. I'll take it. And I say we erred at that point because normally, when we do something like that, we give you a parameter. We give you a description. We give you a guideline. We gave you a blank slate and just said, do it. And I think some of us would have said to ourselves, I had something in mind, what might have happened. John might have had something all the way down the line. And then when we saw it, it was like, whoa.
That's not what I thought.
Not even close. Because I would never have agreed to that. Because where I came from as an elective exploratory teacher, but I'm just saying, we blew it on our end. But I think, as John said also, everybody did. And I'm saying us, admin, staff, even parents. Because you put out surveys. Some people get the survey where they do, and I'm big on surveys because I think if it's done right, you can get good information. No time, I don't understand it. As John said, you guys are good people, you'll figure it out, and then all of a sudden when it was wrong, we got it. I think we all learned from this. So I'm hoping, and like Bob said with the magic wand, hey, if it takes 3 years, take 3 years. We don't have to rush this. So I'm just saying, we're all at error on this one. But we all learn, we're in the education field. You make mistakes, what do? You go back, you correct it, just don't make the mistake again. That's all, right? That's fair. And there we go. So I'm done.
Thanks, guys. I think just piggybacking on a little bit about what they said is definitely we need to go back. I don't think the board is not sending this back. I think we're all saying it needs to go back, especially based on some of the things that were said today. Things need to change. I think we all agree on that.
100%.
I hope it doesn't take 3 years for the sake of our students. But I definitely feel that I think the work that's being done at the middle school for our kids is still wonderful in our high school and our schools. So I thank you for that. But you know, again, the report given tonight shows that we do need to work on this. And you know, I do know what MTSS is, so I can understand. I understand it. I understand how it's not. But I also want to stress again, this is not just about one kid or the 96 kids. It's every one of our students benefits from services in always.
Absolutely.
And I mean, we all know, I mean, you're dealing with adolescents too. The worst time in most kids' lives. I mean, there's nothing fun about middle school. So even your straight A, sweet, little, cute girl, there's something going on.
Yeah.
And to be able to incorporate that in a day where a lot of times our kids spend more time at school than they do at home is important. And I don't think any of us would take away from that. So you know, thank you for bringing this to us and sharing this hard data and this information, and you know, we'll work together to keep going on.
And we're here. I mean, just because we send you off to do something doesn't mean you can't come back and say, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking. And I said this to Lisa today. We don't want to do this work for you because we can't, but we can sure listen and be like, maybe that doesn't sound quite right. Like the community, we're all connected to the community. So we might be able to slow that down instead of having the thing that happened.
I think that we're really good at this, and I think that when you come and tell your story like this, it's very clear to us exactly why we're doing. So I think we just want to continue that conversation, and I love the fact that like there's 7 people here sitting. We believe in you and we believe in what you're doing, and we're excited that you still are going to be working on this problem. And I really love the fact that we are in an environment where we didn't do everything perfectly. And if we always tried to do everything perfectly, we would not try things that were scary or new, and we would never screw up. And if we never screwed up, it would mean that we're not helping kids as much as we need. When we teach our kids, they have to be okay trying something that's scary and new, and you're going to mess up, and it's okay. And I love the fact that we have some people sitting here going, yeah, none of us quite did it right, so let's move forward and figure out, because we're actually really good at a lot of this.
I think one of the best lessons you can teach your kids is it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a question before we go further down this road. This is a serious question, and I want us to kick it around for a minute. If we had laid out a public relations campaign on this 3 or 4 months before we released the schedule changes, and we got our ducks lined up in a row, would this plan have succeeded if we had communicated it properly to the community in a reasonable time period?
Meaning prior or
I mean, before we launched the rocket, if we explained why we're going to the moon,
You know, honestly,
would
John,
this plan have worked?
It would have illustrated how it wouldn't work.
a different question that I have though is I'm almost glad it didn't, because I feel like there were so many things that as they went through this process, now I'm hearing feedback that this wasn't quite what we wanted, and we weren't quite where we needed to be.
Okay.
And so in some ways, the fact that it didn't go quite the way we wanted is the best gift we could have had, because I feel like what we're going to end up with.
Is that the consensus, that this was a flawed plan and we weren't ready?
But I don't want
No, I don't think that's why we stopped, but I think we realized that upon reflection.
Right, but I don't want to poo-poo the idea, the concept that he brings up, that if we would have started to plot out a communication program based around this giant ship turning, we probably would have identified a lot of gotchas along the way, and we would have scrubbed the launch well before it got to the launch pad.
Yes, I would agree with that 100%.
Okay, so that's on senior management to figure out.
Yeah.
I think that we all kind of
These folks
said
to come up with
that.
a good plan, but I
Yeah.
really need the senior management folks to come up with a way to get that process.
I feel like as a whole group, we didn't do a lot of the things that we're actually really good at. And we just need to remember to do some of the things that we've gotten really good at and keep doing it. We have good processes. And usually things come back to the board and we talk about them and we bounce them and we hear them and we have awesome communication.
We've come a long way in communication, and this was just a hiccup.
Yeah.
It's a big hiccup, but we've come a long way.
I'm not throwing slings and arrows.
Yeah.
I'm saying we're going to go back to this process
Right.
and we're going to figure this out. So one of the things that's important from this right now is to make sure that we avoid doing what we just did. You have to identify where did that go wrong, and then you have to fix it. And if there's a communication problem, that's one thing. If there's flaws in the plan, that's another thing. But I believe we had issues on both ends of that.
So actually, may I add a couple of thoughts? I agree with pretty much everything that my fellow board members have said. I think if we're going to take on responsibility as a board, that it is important that we provide direction as far as where we want them to go. And I think part of that is acknowledging that we had a bad experience, figuring out what went wrong during that process. Ultimately, the process worked because we didn't implement something that was bad. So obviously, somewhere along the line, the process worked, but it broke down because it should have been caught sooner, I think. And based on a lot of the people that I talked to, we probably should have caught this sooner before we ended up with bad news right before Christmas break, right before people were registering. It seems to me like if we had bounced it off more people, we probably would have avoided a lot of embarrassment and a lot of loss of trust, which I think we are experiencing.
Well, that was
I don't
embarrassed.
know if that's really.
I don't think embarrassment is the correct
because
word.
if you go put something out there, you have to take the chance. And like I said, they went and they did what they thought they had to do.
Yeah.
Communication was really, where I have a hang up with the communication part is, sometimes I think, and I'm sorry, I just think with administration, with the communication part, is I think sometimes you might be afraid of what you're going to say on that piece of the why. And you really have to explain that, and that's going to be a hard thing to do, but sometimes you want to hold back because you don't want to put all your stuff out there to a degree because you don't know how it's going to work. And we failed in that part. I mean, with us. I mean, it's hard for us to do anything unless we're sitting here at this table. If we're out and there's nothing, it's only one of us, okay? And we don't speak for each other when we're away from here. So on how you present that, the communication has to be the key. What is it really we're trying to do and for what reason? But there's other avenues out there. I think it's just a big learning curve. And I think everybody will take heart in this. And yes, take our time, what the avenue you want, push it through, and go from it. I just think there's no blame because it happened. It's just like in life, something happened. Now let's just correct it. And take advantage of that we know the big picture now. Listen, how are we going to put it all together? And we have some data, and sometimes I look at data as, some of my fellow board members know, because I take it as a person, not a number. And so we have some of that we can put into it, and I think we'll learn from it. So I hope that helps, Chris. I mean, I'm not trying to put a blame or a setup.
Here's what I think is important is I think we need to specifically research and investigate this specific incident and figure out what went wrong. And here's the reason why is I think that there were opportunities along the way where we could have seen this is not the best idea. We should have avoided it before it happened. And I think we can make sure that the safeguards are in place so that it doesn't happen in the future. But in order to do that, we have to identify what went wrong and where in the process we went.
I agree with you, but I'm not sure exactly who are you thinking needs to investigate, because that's not our responsibility.
No, I'm not saying that it's our responsibility, but I think it is our responsibility to ask them to go through that process.
And I think that's kind of what we've all said.
it would be everybody who was involved in that,
right?
And then come back and report to us what they find before we move on with
the reflection has started. The reflection period
I think
started.
that's kind of what we've all said.
Well, I just want to make sure we can come up with a specific charge and ask that, as opposed to just have a general idea of that's what we need.
I think we got to be careful on the specific part of it, because that's the expertise of that part. Hey, I dealt with, when I was teaching, I was on leadership, John taught.
Well,
a schedule is a beast in education. There's so many variables with it. It's a monster out there. And it takes somebody really that knows it to figure this out. Now, I'm not going to put a blame on anybody with a schedule. It's hard, okay? And I worked on it for a lot of years, and I still didn't even get it right. Okay?
I think putting a specific charge is, I mean, we're
yes,
not
come back to us, talk to us, or something with the ad yourself. But I don't think we need to have a committee on a committee or anything like that.
No, I would just like Brian to come back in a couple months and give us his reflection.
Is this what you were looking for, so on and so forth?
This would be great. This would be great, is if you, before we float the next one, come talk to us.
There you go.
Before we launch the rocket.
And that's also, I mean, I think administration can bring reports to us on a regular basis, but I think everyone is saying, what I hear is that everyone is saying the same thing in a different way.
I think it comes back to what John started with, which was the people that need to be a part of this didn't really understand the reasons, and it's not just the community, it's the teachers. Sure. So the teachers came to speak their concerns, and we launched right into, okay, then we'll fix it. We'll get more people into the classroom.
Right.
And that wasn't the most positive response, nor did it feel positive that night. Mm-hmm. So that led into some hostility, for sure. I never came back around and said, hey guys, I know that was a little bit of an awkward night, but what do we want to change here? Like, let's take a look at the risk assessments. Let's take a look at how stressed out our kids. When I taught at Rotolo, the day was not like this. Liz and I were on the same team, and we used a block schedule. We did that on our team because we knew it was too much for our kids to do what they're doing right now. And now every child at Rotolo, from the minute they walk in until they leave, is what we avoided. Is Liz still here? Liz? We did this naturally. We had a block schedule for our kids because we knew it was too much for them. But now we have this very set schedule that every child has, and change is scary because if you say we're going to have less social studies and science, and I believe that social studies is the most important thing in the world, I think somebody here does, that's a scary feeling. So we all have to understand the reason, and then we all have to have some assurance that you're going to be a part of the solution, you're not going to be kicked to the curb. So I think, and I don't think any of this is intentional, but it went in with hostility. It did. I was kind of ticked off that night. And I'm pretty nice, you know, so, but instead of like going back and saying, all right, guys, kind of a rough night, but you're right. Kids are stressed out, teachers are stressed out, let's figure out a way to do this together, and here's why. I think we all went in different directions. I didn't really do very much at all except do a co-teaching training. But I could have helped in many ways, and I didn't even offer.
So
I
mean,
think
it
there's
even
so
sounds
many
like,
things we could have done.
I'm sorry. I mean, it even sounds like you have, and Bob had said, you've been on your reflection.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you see the things that need to change. And so, I mean,
yeah,
I hope that continues.
And the teachers know it.
Sure.
But they know that there's a better way.
Sure.
They just want to be a part of that. And it's...
And as we kind of sum it up, I think, and we can all speak about this, but it's going to be communicated differently.
Yes.
Our parents, our teachers, it's going to be different. And
yes,
everybody will be a part of that process.
Absolutely.
Little by little. It starts here, obviously it starts here, so every detail is not going to be known. But that's not how things are done.
But I like the idea of kind of updates along the way. Yes. So here's the progress we're making. Yep. Any thoughts from the community, or what are you guys hearing? Like, I think that's a really good way, and I know that's what Brian and his team want. They want this to be.
And I need to be a better conduit of that to you guys and to our teachers and to parents and to administration here as well too. And I think those are the reflective pieces that we can do as we go through this piece. All right, how does that impact the stakeholders around? All right, let's make sure that the people are informed. Okay, now let's move to the next phase. Let's make sure everybody is informed. Let's go to the next phase. Yeah. And I think that those are the types of pieces that no matter what we're doing, whether it's related to a schedule or not, is good practice. And we missed the mark in certain areas along the way, which has led to this type of pieces. Sure.
Well, we do love the way you're going to see it.
Yeah. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I have every confidence.
It'll be amazing.
You do excellent work.
I just want to say one thing before Brian goes. Brian, I was at the coffee on the day with the people about the schedule, and I just want to commend you on the job well done. You took ownership in it. You said we had to stop it, and I think people walked out of there at least somewhat okay. You're transparent on it, and I just wanted to give you the courtesy to say I thought you did a fabulous job, and I think there's a couple people here in the audience that might have been there, and I would hope they agree. If they don't, we can agree to disagree, but I just wanted to say job well done on that part. Thank you.
I think the evidence of that is we did have a lynch mob tonight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Truly.
All right, let's stop grilling you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
That was fun. Cheers, guys. Okay,
architect. So I invite up Mark Anderson, who's our Director of Operations. He led this, he's leading, it's not finished yet, this selection process. We're joined here this evening by representatives from DLR, Dennis Bain and Carrie Van Sant, and we'll let Mark give you the details about the process, but this comes from the recommendations that were presented to the board in October about our facilities and our long-term facilities plan.
So this process started, it's probably been at least 2 months or more ago. Basically starts with what's called an RFQ, a request for qualifications. I'll try to learn from the last presentation. Went through too many of those, but we had 11 firms respond. Narrowed that down to 7, which is part of a smaller group interview with 7 of those firms. And I'm giving you a very overview of this. And then after those 7, we narrowed that down to 3, and those are the 3 firms that you should see in front of you. And as the law states, you have to rank those 3. And a group of 8 of us who did that interview did this ranking of 1, 2, and 3. So the next step is after you hear this report tonight, then we enter into negotiations with DLR group, and hopefully that goes well, and then we can bring back that action item after that.
And so that action item would be a contract. In the event that we were unable for some reason to reach a satisfactory contract with DLR, we would then go to the next firm on the list. But I have faith that we'll be able to do that with DLR. And this is the part where we can start talking about price. So prior to that, the way the law stipulates that we can't talk about the cost of services. We can talk about how arrangements might be made. We can't talk about the cost of services until we enter into the contract negotiation phase. So we anticipate that we would bring a contract with DLR to you in February for your approval.
So can I ask, what is this group actually going to bring back to us, per se? If they're hired and they do a job, what are they actually bringing back? Just to make a clarification, just so an understanding.
Right, so what they're going to bring back is, after they do the proposals. So the facilities committee identified and ranked different projects that need to be done.
Right.
So then we'll charge DLR with the task of bringing us a cost estimate back for each of those projects.
Okay. And what architects call a schematic design. So we can conceptualize how these projects might fit together and how much they might cost. But we'd be paying DLR to do this work, to provide cost estimates and schematic designs before we ever have them do more work where we would bid it out.
Okay.
And we would pay them for that work too. But this is the kind of preliminary early work.
Okay, this reads with the board's permission. We're not doing a motion on this. We just...
Correct, because we're not committing any money or anything yet. We're just starting the conversation.
So we just thumbs up, thumbs down.
Just FYI.
Give you an update of
Just so
where
we
we're
can
at.
Just a discussion.
The rocket's not launching yet.
Good.
But it's being wheeled out to the ground.
You're learning. I like that.
It's an assumption of our permission. That's what it is, with the board's permission.
It is kind of an Mark, when we wrote this, he's like, do you want to leave the word permission in there? And I said, well, we don't want to presume that they're not going to want us to do this. And so we left the word in, but we didn't want to confuse you. Because we do this with your blessing.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Good. Prosper.
Thank you.
I want to see that new dishwasher too.
Thank you so much. We only have one item on our agenda for action, but it is actually an item that we will be discussing in closed session. After we return from open session, we will be taking action on our discussion. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session to discuss the placement of individual students in special education programs and other matters relating to individual students.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Gaspar, seconded by Locke. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.